Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopi Janavalabha Jaya Girivaradhari Jaya Girivaradhari Jaya Gopi Janavalabha Jaya Girivaradhari Jaya Girivaradhari Jaya Yasodanandana Jaya Braja Janaranjana Jaya Yasodanandana Jaya Braja Janaranjana Jaya Yamuna Tiravanachari Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Yamuna Tiravanachari Jaya Kunja Reading today from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 2, Chapter 9, Text 36. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. I did forget my glasses, but we'll try. Please repeat after me. Etavad Eva Jigyasyam Etavadeva Jigyasyam Etavadeva Jigyasyam Tattva Jigyasuna Atmanaha Tattva Jigyasunatmanaha Tattva Jigyasunatmanaha Anvaya Vyatirekabhyam Anvaya Vyatirekabhyam Anvaya Vyatirekabhyam Yatsyat Sarvatra Sarvada Yatsyat Sarvatra Sarvada Yatsyat Sarvatra Sarvada Etavadeva Jigyasyam Tattva Jigyasunatmanaha Anvaya Vyatirekabhyam Yatsyat Sarvatra Sarvada. Sunatmanaha Anvaya Vyatirekabhyam Yatsyat Sarvatra Sarvada Atavadeva Jigyasyam Tattva Jigyasunatmanaha Anvaya Vyatirekabhyam Yasyat Sarvatra Sarvada. Tattva Jigyasunatmanaha Tanvaya Vyatirekabhyam Yatsyat Sarvatra Sarvada. Etavad. Up to this. Eva. Certainly. Jigyasyam is to be inquired. Tattva, the absolute truth. Jigyasuna, by the student. Atmanaha, of the self. Anvaya, directly. Vyatirekabhyam, indirectly. Yat, whatever. Syat, it may be. Sarvatra, in all space and time. Sarvada, in all circumstances. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Translation. A person who is searching after the supreme absolute truth, the personality of Godhead, most certainly search for it up to this in all circumstances, in all space and time, and both directly and indirectly. Now, this is a very extensive purport that Srila Prabhupada has given to this last verse of Chatushloki Bhagavatam. And Krishna Kirtan Prabhu advised that it will be really a joint effort between Vasu Prabhu and myself. So Vasu Prabhu will continue with the purport tomorrow. So we will try to go through some aspects and some concepts that Srila Prabhupada describes in this purport today, and then we'll continue with the discussion of this beautiful verse tomorrow. Would that be okay? Yes, okay. So the purport. To unfold the mystery of Bhakti Yoga, as it is explained in the previous verse, is the ultimate stage of all inquiries, or the highest objective for the inquisitive. Everyone is searching after self-realization in different ways, by Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga, by Dhyana Yoga, by Raja Yoga, by Bhakti Yoga, etc. To engage in self-realization is the responsibility of every living entity developed in consciousness. One who is developed in consciousness certainly makes inquiries into the mystery of the self, of the cosmic situation, and of the problems of life in all spheres and fields, social, political, economic, cultural, religious, moral, etc., and in their different branches. But here, the goal of all such inquiries is explained. The Vedanta Sutra philosophy begins with this inquiry about life, and the Bhagavatam answers such inquiries up to this point, or the mystery of all inquiries. Lord Brahma wanted to be perfectly educated by the personality of Godhead, and here is the answer by the Lord, finished in 4 nutshell verses from Aham Eva, so Aham Eva was the first verse of the Chatushloki, to this verse, Etavadeva. This is the end of all self-realization processes. Men do not know that the ultimate goal of life is Vishnu, or the Supreme Personality of Godhead, due to being bewildered by the glaring reflection in the darkness, and as such everyone is entering into the darkest region of material existence, driven by the uncontrolled senses. The whole material existence has sprung up because of sense gratification. Desires based principally on the sex desire, and the result is that in spite of all advancement of knowledge, the final goal of all the activities of the living entities is sense gratification. But here is the real goal of life, and everyone should know it by inquiries put before a bona fide spiritual master, expert in the science of Bhakti Yoga, or from a living personality of Bhagavatam life. Everyone is engaged in various kinds of scriptural inquiries, but the Srimad Bhagavatam gives answers to all of the various students of self-realization. This ultimate objective of life is not to be searched out without great labor or perseverance. One who is imbued with such sincere inquiries must ask the bona fide spiritual master in the disciplic succession from Brahmaji, and that is the direction given here. Because the mystery was disclosed before Brahmaji by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the mystery of all such inquiries regarding self-realization must be put before such a spiritual master, who is directly the representative of the Lord, acknowledged in that disciplic succession. Such a bona fide spiritual master is able to clear up the whole thing by evidence from the revealed scriptures, both direct and indirect. Although everyone is free to consult the revealed scriptures in this connection, one still requires the guidance of a bona fide spiritual master, and that is the direction in this verse. The bona fide spiritual master is the most confidential representative of the Lord, and one must receive direction from the spiritual master in the same spirit that Brahmaji received it from the personality of Godhead. Lord Krishna. The bona fide spiritual master in that bona fide chain of disciplic succession never claims to be the Lord himself. Although such a spiritual master is greater than the Lord in the sense that he can deliver the Lord by his personally realized experience, the Lord is not to be found simply by education or by a good fertile brain, but surely he can be found by the sincere student through the transparent medium. But because the bewildered living entities are blinded by the glaring reflection in the darkness, they are unable to find the truth of the revealed scriptures. For example, in the Bhagavad Gita, the whole direction is targeted towards the personality of Godhead, Lord Sri Krishna. But for want of a bona fide spiritual master in the line of Brahmaji or the direct hearer, Arjuna, there are different distortions of the revealed knowledge by many unauthorized persons who just want to satisfy their own whims. Undoubtedly, the Bhagavad Gita is accepted as one of the most brilliant stars in the horizon of the spiritual sky. Yet the interpretations of this great book of knowledge have so grossly been distorted that every student of the Bhagavad Gita is still in the same darkness of glaring material reflections. Such students are hardly enlightened by the Bhagavad Gita. In the Gita particularly, the same instruction is impaired as in the 4 prime verses of the Bhagavatam. But due to wrong and fashionable interpretations by unauthorized persons, one cannot reach the ultimate conclusion. In the Bhagavad Gita 1861, it is clearly said, Ishvara sarvabhutanam riddhesher junatishtati brahmayan sarvabhutani yantrarudhani mayaya. The Lord is situated in the hearts of all living beings as Paramatma, and he is controlling all of them in the material world under the agency of his external energy. Therefore, it is clearly mentioned that the Lord is the supreme controller and that the living entities are controlled by the Lord. In the same Bhagavad Gita 1865, the Lord directs as follows, Manmana bhava madbhakto madhyaji mam namaskuru mamivaishyasi satyam te pratijane priyosi me. It is clear from this verse of the Bhagavad Gita that the direction of the Lord is that one should be God-minded, a devotee of the Lord, a worshipper of the Lord, and must offer all obeisances unto Lord Krishna. By so doing, the devotee will undoubtedly go back to home, go back to Godhead, back to home. Indirectly, it is said that the whole Vedic social construction of human society is so made that everyone acts as a part and parcel of the complete body of the Lord. The intelligent class of men, or the Brahmanas, are situated on the face of the Lord. The administrative class of men, the Kshatriyas, are situated on the arms, yes, thank you, of the Lord. The productive class of men, the Vaishyas, are situated on the stomach, and Srila Prabhupada here says on the belt of the Lord. And laborer class of men, the Shudras, are situated on the legs, yes, of the Lord. Therefore, the complete social construction is the body of the Lord, and all the parts of the body, namely the Brahmanas, the Kshatriyas, the Vaishyas, and the Shudras, are meant to serve the Lord's whole body conjointly. Otherwise, the parts become unfit to be coordinated with the supreme consciousness of oneness. Universal consciousness is factually achieved by coordinated service of all concerned to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and that alone can ensure total perfection. Therefore, even the great scientists, the great philosophers, the great mental speculators, the great politicians, there's a lot of great people listed here, the great industrialists, the great social reformers, etc., they cannot give any relief to the restless society of the material world because they do not know the secret of success, as mentioned in this verse of the Bhagavatam, namely that one must know the mystery of Bhakti Yoga. In the Bhagavad Gita 7.15 also it is said, Namam dushkritino mudha prapadyante naradhama mayaya paratagyana asuram bhavam ashrita. Because the so-called great leaders of human society are ignorant of this great knowledge of Bhakti Yoga and are always engaged in ignoble acts of sense gratification, bewildered by the external energy of the Lord, they are stubborn rebels against the supremacy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and they never agree to surrender unto Him because they are fools, miscreants, and the lowest type of human beings. Such faithless non-believers may be highly educated in the material sense of the term, but factually they are the greatest fools and rascals, yes, Prabhupada says fools of the world, because by the influence of the external material nature, all their so-called acquisition of knowledge has been made null and void. Therefore, all advancement of knowledge in the present context of things is being misused by cats and dogs fighting with one another for sense gratification. And all acquisition of knowledge in science, philosophy, fine arts, nationalism, economic development, religion, and great activities are being spoiled by being used as dresses for dead men. There's no utility in the dresses used for covering a coffin of a dead body, save getting false applause from the ignorant public. The Srimad Bhagavatam therefore says again and again that without attainment of the status of Bhakti Yoga, all the activities of human society are to be considered absolute failures only. Very strong words. It is said, Parabhavas tavad abodhajato yavanna jigyasata atmatattvam yavat kriyas tavad idam manovai karmatmakam yena sharira bandha. That's the verse from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 5, Chapter 5, Text 5. 5. As long as one is blind to inquiring after self-realization, all material activities, however great they may be, are all different kinds of defeat, because the aim of human life is not fulfilled by such unwanted and profitless activities. The function of the human body is to attain freedom from material bondage, and as long as one is fully absorbed in material activities, his mind will be overwhelmed in the whirlpool of matter, and thus he will continue to be engaged in material bodies, life after life. Let's just see. If we are fair in dividing the purport, then there are 2 more pages, Vasa Prabhu.
We've got 555 and now just about to read 556, so maybe you could do 1 more paragraph.
Okay, and then you will, yeah. This discussion technically happened yesterday. So next verse, Srila Prabhupada quotes in the purport, Evam mana Krishna vasam prayunkte avidyayat mani upadhiyamane pritirna yavan mai vasudeve namuchyate deha yogena tavat. So that's 556. It is one's mind that generates different kinds of bodies for suffering different kinds of material pangs. Therefore, as long as the mind is absorbed in fruitive activities, the mind is understood to be absorbed in nescience, and thus one is sure to be subjected to material bondage in different bodies again and again, until one develops a transcendental love for Godhead, Vasudeva, the Supreme Person. To become absorbed in the transcendental name, quality, form, and activities of the Supreme Person, Vasudeva, means to change the temper of the mind from matter to absolute knowledge, which leads one to the path of absolute realization and thus frees one from the bondage of material contact and engagements in different material bodies. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Thank you very much. we've come now in the discussion of Srimad Bhagavatam to the very last verse of Chatushloki, or the 4 seed verses in which Lord Krishna really expounds all absolute transcendental knowledge, which will be elaborated on to great depth throughout Srimad Bhagavatam. Now, Lord Brahma initially was quite perplexed, because when he found himself sitting on the lotus flower, he could not understand the origin of that lotus flower. He could not understand or find who is the creator, where did he come from. But he did have that understanding that my service is to create. My service is to develop this universe. Now, in this particular situation, Lord Brahma heard the 2 syllables, ta, pa, which means, as we've learned over the past verse, austerities, right? Which means the practice of austerities. And when Lord Brahma heard those 2 syllables, he thought, well, let me find the source of this sound. So that was kind of one of those original dives when Lord Brahma went into the water and swam in the water of causal ocean in order to find the source of this sound, but he could not. After he wasn't able to find the source of the sound, Lord Brahma sat on the lotus flower, on the lotus, and engaged in austerities. Now, these austerities lasted very long time. How many years did we read? The austerities lasted. It was 1,000 celestial years. And in that purport, Srila Prabhupada gives actually a mathematical calculation of 6 times 30 times 12 times 1,000. And that comes to 2,160,000 years, right, of our time that Lord Brahma participated in those austerities, or engaged in those austerities. As a result of those austerities and that sincere desire or earnestness to know, and we'll come to this in this particular verse, Lord Brahma was able to see the Lord, or Lord revealed himself. Lord Krishna revealed himself in his form as Lord Narayan on Vaikuntha planets. And there are beautiful descriptions. There are beautiful descriptions given when Brahma saw the Lord. And as those descriptions evolve, it becomes apparent that it wasn't just some kind of vision, right? Well, sometimes we're in dream and we see some things. It was a real perception of the Lord. As close to the end of this description, when Krishna begins to give instructions, or Lord Narayan, Lord Vishnu begins to give instructions to Lord Brahma, there's a word in use that says karasparshan. That means that the Lord actually held Brahma's hand. Right? Srila Prabhupada says he shook his hand. Now sparshan has got the sense of continuity, which means he held his hand for a little while as he was talking. So it's a very personal encounter that Lord Brahma had with Lord Narayan. And then Lord Narayan has instructed Brahma in the spiritual science of creation. Now, after Lord Brahma heard from Lord Vishnu about the science of creation, then I think it is verses 26 to 29 in this chapter of Srimad Bhagavatam. Lord Brahma says in verse 29, Bhagavat Shikshita Maham Karavanihi Atandritaha. He says that now that I've heard the spiritual science and now I've heard how to execute this creation, my dear Lord, let me be engaged in what I've been taught. Atandrita, let me be your instrument. And he also says that let me execute this process of creation, but let me not become proud when I'm doing that. Right? And we kind of can maybe, even reflecting upon the complexity of this material creation, think how unique and how special all the functions. We'll look inside our body and see how all the different elements function, how the planets move, how the plants grow, how the atoms are constructed. There is such an amazing complexity. When we create something small, we feel a little proud. Saying, yeah, look, I've done that. How much pride can be there when you have this amazing creation that, despite all human efforts to destroy it, is still working. And of course, Lord Brahma asks the Lord that let me create, but let me not become bound by this creation. And please, don't let me become proud. Now, when we come to the Chatushloki Bhagavatam, this is the verse where the Lord actually speaks about the sadhana, or how you should execute your devotional service, or how you should execute your service. And the verse has got several parts, or several central concepts, so we could look into those concepts, and we'll share with Vasu Prabhu the discussion of these concepts. At the start, you can see over there on the board, it says etavad. Etavad means up to this point, right? Up to this point. And up to this point, in the relation to Chatushloki Bhagavatam, means up to Bhakti Yoga, or up to understanding Krishna, up to the point of devotional service. The second concept here is Jigyasyam. And Jigyasyam means a desire to know. The two other concepts that appear in this verse are Anvaya and Vyatireka. And Srila Prabhupada translates those words as Anvaya means directly, and Vyatireka means indirectly. And lastly, there are two other concepts that are being discussed, is Sarvatra and Sarvada. Sarvatra means everywhere, and Sarvada means at all times. So maybe we'll start with Jigyasyam. A very familiar word, Jigyasa. It actually appears in the first sutra of Vedanta Sutras, or Brahma Sutras. In Brahma Sutra, the very first verse, or the very first aphorism is Atato Brahma Jigyasa. Right? Atato Brahma Jigyasa. And what does that mean? Atato Brahma Jigyasa.
Now we've achieved this really human form of life, now is the time to search out the absolute truth.
Yes, now it is the time to search for the absolute truth. So the word Jigyasa is that desire to search for the absolute truth. It comes from the Sanskrit verb gya. Gya means to know. But unfortunately, English language is quite primitive. So the knowledge in English language, when we hear the word to know, mostly it's associated with some kind of intellectual activity. Oh, I learned something and now I'm saying that. Right. In Sanskrit, word gya, or the verbal root gya, has kind of much deeper meaning. Apart from just intellectual knowledge and understanding, it also means engaging in. It also means experiencing. Right? It's a very broad concept. Now, the gya, I think there was a devotee a few days back yesterday was speaking about yujutsu. Remember, he was asking a question about Chinese language? And then said there's the jiu-jitsu that came from the word yujutsu. Yujutsu means desiring to fight. Right? And it comes from the word yud, which means to fight. So in the same fashion, the desire to know, right, is done by duplicating the verbal root. You have the gya and gya, then you change gya to gi, then you change gi to ji, and becomes jigyasa. And jigyasa means a desire to know, but also it means desire to experience, desire to be engaged in. Right? It is that earnest desire that stands as the root of understanding the absolute truth. Atato Brahma Jigyasa. Now, it says now that I've come to this human form of life, Baladevi Debushan in his Govinda Bhashya, he explains that Atha means that a person has a certain qualification in order to inquire about the absolute truth. And it is interesting that in Govinda Bhashya, the qualifications are first stated, well, someone has studied the Vedas, right? Or someone has cleansed the mind by performing of sacrifices. But it also says that if a person is just engaged in the activities of their varna and ashrama, right, which means that we're engaging ourselves according to our propensities, then that person also becomes purified. And then as a result of this purification, before we start inquiring about the absolute truth, there's another element that comes in, and that element is the prasanga, right, tattvavid prasanga, which means that at that point, a person becomes interested in associating with tattvavits. And tattvavid is know the truth. Basically, the devotees. A person becomes interested to associate with devotees. And in that association, tattvavid prasanga, that desire to inquire, and let's keep in mind that this inquire is a broader concept, which means desire to serve, becomes very strong, becomes very prominent. Atato Brahma Jigyasa. Narada Muni, when in his previous birth, when he was serving the great souls that came and stayed in the ashram where Narada was living, Narada in his previous birth, and stayed for the 4 months of Chaturmasya, what was Narada Muni doing there? He was just serving, he was cleaning, but at the same time, while doing that, he was associating with those great souls. And he was also hearing what they were discussing. So his earnest desire became very, very strong. That's Narada Muni. Yes. Then we can move to the next concept, which is etavad eva. So there is the earnest desire to serve, or earnest desire to learn about the absolute truth. Etavad eva refers to the ultimate goal of all endeavors, an ultimate goal of learning. Now, Srila Prabhupada speaks at the start of the purport. There's a very beautiful paragraph there that he says that people who are kind of intellectually have a higher consciousness, they're thinking about how to solve the problems of life. Right? So the sciences, political sciences, religious sciences, etc., they all have kind of a desire to solve and resolve the issues that we have in our lives. Right? Unfortunately, they don't go all the way to the point of learning about the absolute truth, right, and engaging in the devotional service. It just stops just before that, unfortunately. You know, in the modern science, the most recent developments of quantum mechanics and quantum physics, like going to really the absolute minute particles. There's the 26 kilometer, what do you call that thing? The the collider, right? Let's smash the atom, right, and see what's inside. The amount of energy that's generated there is absolutely amazing. It begins to kind of, it is a borderline fiction. But they don't go further, right? What's that? The atom right now, do you understand? There's the protons and there's neutrons and going even to smaller particles. I think they call them quarks, right? But it kind of stops there, and then the consciousness doesn't go one step further. Is that where does it come from? Where's so much energy? How come so much energy is contained with such a minute particle? Now, Krishna is within the atom. That Vedas speak about those minute particles and says Krishna is within them, and that's the source of energy. Etavadeva jigyasyam. However, one who has developed, who has the association of devotees, who is studying the scriptures, who is performing devotional service, that person is able to come to that ultimate realization, which is engagement in bhakti yoga. Now, let's move to the two other concepts. It's Anvaya and Vyatireka. Now, Anvaya and Vyatireka, as we discussed, this verse provides the guidance in terms of how to perform sadhana, right? How to perform devotional service. Now, Anvaya refers to apart from kind of a direct service or direct experience, it also refers to vidhi. Vidhi means rules. And vyatireka refers to nishedha, which means prohibitions. So when we perform our devotional service, there are always some regulations of what we should do and some regulations of what we should avoid doing. What's one of the kind of first scriptures that we learn about, say, 6 principles that help our devotional service and 6 principles that make it a little bit difficult to be successful? It's nectar of instruction, right? Upadeshamrita. So there are 6 principles which are the anvayas that help us to perform devotional service, and 6 principles which make it difficult. Let's see whether we can remember those, or we could read those. Yes. So let's see what makes it. What are the nishedas? What are the principles of practice that kind of make it difficult to, be successful in devotional service? What are they? You have atyahara. Atyahara means over-endeavoring, right? No, atyahara means overeating. Atyahara, eating too much. Or too much collecting. And then you have atyahara prayasa. So prayasa means the over-endeavoring, that one. Atyahara prayasascha. Prajalpa is a very common word. Prajalpa is just talking unnecessarily. Sometimes Srila Prabhupada gives the example of a frog croaking. Quack, 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 quack. What usually happens when a frog croaks in Australia? Mm-hmm. Yes, that's the usual outcome. So let's call the outcome of prajalpa. And then you have niyamagraha. And niyamagraha has 2 meanings. One is, really being so pedantic about the rules and regulations. Or niyamagraha means not having any rules and regulations. So either of 2 are actually not conducive. So it's really finding that balance. The Ramai Swami mentioned yesterday so beautifully, said that once we've got the material body, we're compromised. Right? Yes, there are tons of rules and regulations that we need to perform, but can we be fully successful? So we need to find that compromise that allows us to engage in devotional service and not engage in niyamagraha. Janasanga means association with materialistic people. And association is very important. We are really what, I remember Radhanath Swami once said in his grave voice, you are what you associate with. And that's one conscious decision that we can make, who and what we associate with. That's within our free will. But interestingly enough, if we go deeper and deeper into the undesirable association, that free will becomes quite covered. It becomes difficult to leave that association. But by Srila Prabhupada's mercy, we have the Society of Devotees where we have that beautiful association of like-minded people. And finally, lolyam. Lolyam means greediness. Right? So as devotees, we should avoid being greedy. We should not be avoiding being greedy for Krishna, but we should be avoiding to be greedy for our own sense gratification. And so that's anvaya. Anvaya means those aspects that prevent the successful performance of devotional service. And what are the vyatirekas? What are the nishedas? These were the nishedas. So what are the anvayas? What makes it? What helps the devotional service to flourish? It starts with utsaha, enthusiasm. Right? We've seen just now in the kirtan how enthusiastically devotees were dancing and chanting, how enthusiastically devotees are performing service, cooking prasadam, serving prasadam. Utsaha. Nishchaya means confidence. Dhairya means patience. Tat karma pravartanat means being engaged in all the different services. And here at the farm we've got no lack of those. Sangatyagat, being mindful of the power of, let's say, the influence that can come from unwanted association, and kind of yes, keeping the unwanted association at a distance. Maybe there is another way of dealing with the unwanted situation, which is to serve and to give, to share Krishna consciousness. Sangat Tyagat and Satovrite, following in the footsteps of devotees. So these 6, they help one to advance in Krishna consciousness. These are the Anvayas and Vyatirekas. Now, as in all verses of Srimad Bhagavatam, there are very different levels of meaning and understanding. And, these are the seeds of the entire scripture. Even mathematically, to think how much meaning is contained within these 4 verses. If we take 18,000 verses of Bhagavad Purana, and you condense those 18,000 into just 4, how many levels of meaning are contained in these words is amazing. Now, Anvaya and Vyatireka, Anvaya also means association, and Vyatireka means separation. And that is already taking the understanding of the verse to the highest mystery of bhakti, highest mysteries of performance of devotional service. In Vrindavan, we have the devotees who serve Krishna, and those devotees sometimes serve Krishna associating with him, and sometimes they serve Krishna in separation. It's such a beautiful pastime of Yagyapatnis. Yagyapatnis were the wives of the Brahmanas. Very beautiful. When Krishna and Balaram and all the cowherd boys were playing in the forest, and you're not just children, I think we as adults also sometimes get carried away in a very enjoyable activity, and the food becomes kind of the last thing on your mind. Yeah, so the boys were playing with calves and cows and trees and throwing things, etc. They were so engaged that they forgot they didn't have lunch. And they were far away in Vrindavan forest. So what's the thing that they do? They go to Krishna and say, "Hey, Krishna, so we'll be hungry. What do we do now?" And Krishna goes, "Yes, I know what to do." Because not too far away, they were kind of playing in the areas which were not far from Mathura district. Right? Quite some far away forests of Vrindavan. It's too far to go home. He said, "Don't worry." He said, "There are some brahmanas, they're performing sacrifice. And if you just go there and say, 'Look, Krishna and Balaram are a bit hungry, can you please give us some food?' You'll certainly get food." The cowherd boy said, "Brilliant idea," and they went straight to the spot, went to the brahmanas. The brahmanas, kind of like adults, and sometimes children are playing around, and then children want something, which was just like pouring their ghee into the yagya, right, and not paying much attention. Om Swaha. Right? And the boys went, can Krishna and Balaram are playing in the forest and they're a bit hungry, can you please give us some food? And one of the brahmanas, there was the brahmanas thought that we can't give you food in this particular sacrifice because there is certain sacrificial rules that need to be followed, but those boys were so clever. There is a verse in Bhagavatam that actually is quite technical. They said, in performance of this particular yagya, unless this is the result and this is the criteria, you actually at this point of time can give us food. Still, now then the pride kicks in. Well, I know better. Who you are? You're just a little child. I know better. Go away. Not giving you any food. What did children do? No, yes, but before that they went back to Krishna and they said, "Look, they didn't give us any food." Now we went all the way there, we asked for food, came back. Now, what's the level of hunger usually when you don't get any food and you already tried to get? Oh. Well, Krishna then said, "Okay, well, we'll teach you Lokika Gatim," he says, Lokika Gatim. He said, how things should be done in the world is that instead of going to the brahmanas, you go to the brahmanas' wives and ask them. And the cowherd boys said, "All right, we'll go to Brahmana's wives." So they went to Brahmana's wives, and when they came over there, right, and they just said that Krishna and Balaram are hungry, this was, like there's a trigger, and everything just changes straight after the trigger. So they just said, Krishna and Balaram are hungry. the wives, they thought, my God, this is Krishna and Balaram about whom we heard. It says that those Yagyapatnis, even though from the upper class of the society, they used to hear about Krishna from the flower girls in Vrindavan. Right? And they developed so much love to Krishna just by hearing. But their love was practiced in the Vyatireka. Vyatireka means in separation. They didn't meet with Krishna. But their love became so strong. It said everything in the house. There's a word there, I think, just like rivers begin to flow into the ocean, all the foodstuffs begin to flow through the door and out. Everything. Krishna wants some food. Wow! You know, there's a later verse says there that, you know, there were still brahmanas, yes, husbands were there performing the sacrifice, but there were still some, you know, brothers or some other people in the family, and one of them tried to hold and said, where are you going? You're supposed to do things at home. The husband or the father or whoever is going to come back. And then some of them were physically restrained, and it says the power of their love and separation that they felt from Krishna was so strong that they gave the body, that Brahma Yagyapatni, she actually left her body and joined Krishna, you know, in her spiritual form. Said, yeah, all right, you keep the body. So that was the separation. Now when the boys told the Yagyapatnis that, you know, this is the situation, then Yagyapatnis went to the forest, and then they went to see their beloved Lord Krishna. And they saw Lord Krishna. It says that in the forests, it's not like, you know, a very trimmed forest. You actually have to move branches as you walk around. And there's a verse there that at one point, you know, they were moving the branches and they had the pots, they had the food. It was quite an endeavor, quite an effort. And they moved the branch, and when they moved the branch, they saw Lord Krishna standing with his friend. Right? And it was one of the most beautiful descriptions. All the descriptions of Krishna are beautiful in Srimad Bhagavatam. This is such a beautiful description in that chapter. So that when they saw Krishna standing there, you know, what was Krishna doing? Do you guys remember? Yes, Chivadar Prabhu. He had one hand on the shoulder of his friend, right? He had a smile on his face. He had a peacock feather in his head. He was dressed as an actor with so many flower decorations because they're in Vrindavan. But with the other hand, he had a lotus flower. And what was he doing with the lotus flower? He wasn't just holding it, he was twirling it. And as he was twirling this lotus flower, the minds of the Yagyapatnis also begin to twirl. And they all kind of went straight to Krishna. And what did Krishna tell them? Swagatam vo Mahabhaga. He said, oh, welcome, most fortunate, very official, right? Krishna used the same words even when the gopis came. He said, welcome, O most fortunate ones. I said, please sit down. Why have you come? So it's in a very grand and very official way he's spoken to them. And after they've placed their food down, Krishna told them to go back. He said, now that you've brought the food, now you can go back. And what did the Yagyapatnis do? Initially they said, no, we can't go back because we left our husbands, we left our, you know, children, brothers, etc., duties. How can we go back? And Krishna said, so this was the Anvaya, the time when they met, when they were associating with Krishna directly. But Krishna still insisted that you guys need to go back. And then those Yagyapatnis, the wives of the Brahmins, they did go back, and they continued their devotional service in the mood of separation. Thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. I think we've run out of time for questions, but because Vasu Prabhu is giving class tomorrow, please let me know. We need to finish as it's Prashadam time, is it? Yeah, okay. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Antrat Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai.